Hello and welcome live from New Delhi. You're watching DD India. I'm Gautam Roy. And welcome to our special show on how India and Qatar have elevated their ties. Before we get into details, our top stories. India and Qatar elevate ties to a strategic partnership after talks between Prime Minister Narendra Modi and Qatar's Amir Al Thani in Delhi. US and Russian representatives meet in Riyadh. The two sides agree that negotiators will talk about Ukraine. Kremlin aide says a Trump-Putin meet is unlikely next week. Israel says will enter negotiations on the next phase of Gaza truce talks this week. And a miraculous escape for all 80 flyers in the flipped Delta plane crash in Toronto. Passengers narrate harrowing experiences and tales of chaos.
1 minute you're landing, kind of waiting to see your friends and your people, and the next minute you're physically upside down and just really turned around. But it sounded, it was just cement and metal,
Now on to our special. Well, the Emir of Qatar, Sheikh Tamim bin Hamad Al Thani, is on a 2-day visit to India. It's a state visit. It's aimed at strengthening growing partnership between the two nations. Our next report brings you more.
Prime Minister Narendra Modi breaking protocol to personally receive the Amir of Qatar as he touched down in New Delhi for his state visit. The warm gesture by the Indian Prime Minister highlighted the growing ties between New Delhi and Doha. The high-profile visit of Sheikh Tamim bin Hamad Al Thani highlights the strengthening ties between India and Qatar, two nations bound by history, trade and diplomacy. On the second day of his 2-day visit, the Amir of Qatar, Tamim, received the Guard of Honor and a ceremonial welcome in the forecourt of the Rashtrapati Bhavan on Tuesday. He was received by President Draupadi Murmu and Prime Minister Narendra Modi along with senior ministers from the government.
His Highness the Amir of Qatar is accompanied by a high-level delegation comprising ministers, senior officials, and business leaders. The dignitaries who are accompanying His Highness include Qatar's Prime Minister and Minister of Foreign Affairs, His Excellency Sheikh Mohammed bin Abdul Rahman Al Thani, as well as the Ministers of Commerce and Industry, Energy, Electronics and Information Technology, Labour, and the Minister of State for Foreign Trade.
Prime Minister Modi held a bilateral meeting with the Emir at Hyderabad House in New Delhi. India and Qatar elevated their ties to strategic partnership as the two sides signed MOU, including on double tax avoidance and prevention of fiscal evasions with respect to taxes on income. With bilateral trade surpassing $14 billion in 2023-24, Qatar remains India's largest supplier of liquid natural gas, fueling the country's growing energy needs. In return, India exports a range of goods from food and textiles to engineering products. This visit is expected to pave the way for new agreements, deepening this economic partnership.
The partnership, which rests on the foundation of trust, trade, and tradition. We have a very strong historical legacy starting right from the old times when we had the Silk Route. But today, we live in a new world, a new age, where we are rewriting the terms of trade. We are rewriting the way business will be conducted. In fact, we are creating new Silk Age routes, whether it's the IMEC, whether it's the newer technologies that we are engaged with.
Qatar's Minister of State for Foreign Trade Affairs, Dr. Ahmed bin Mohammed Al Saeed, highlighted the strong partnership between India and Qatar during Amir Sheikh Tamim bin Hamad Al Thani's visit. He emphasized collaboration in trade, technology and investment, particularly in non-oil sectors, to strengthen bilateral ties.
The world today is changing dramatically in terms of trade and business the apply of technology and AI. Qatar also enhancing the landscape of attractiveness of investment. We are welcoming Indian business people. We are encouraging our business society, government and public sector to invest more in India and to create more partnership.
But beyond trade, defense and security cooperation, the two nations share intelligence on counterterrorism, and India regularly participates in Qatar's maritime defense exhibitions. Recent agreements have bolstered cooperation in cybersecurity, port management, and skill development. Another key pillar of this relationship is the Indian diaspora. Over 800,000 Indians live and work in Qatar, contributing to its development. Their welfare remains a priority in bilateral talks. Jessica Taneja's report for DT India.
And briefing the media further on Qatar Emir Sheikh Tamim bin Hamad Al Thani's visit to India, India's Ministry of External Affairs said that Prime Minister Modi held bilateral talks and expressed desire to expand the multifaceted relations and cooperation between the two sides. India and Qatar have also elevated their ties to a strategic partnership.
Both sides have today agreed to elevate the relationship to a strategic partnership, and India and Qatar have signed an agreement in this regard today.
And MA Secretary Arun Kumar Chatterjee also informed that the trade between India and Qatar is around 14.8 billion US dollars, and both the sides are looking to double it in the next 5 years.
The trade today between India and Qatar is about US dollar 14 billion annually. Both sides have agreed to set a target to double this in the next 5 years.
In addition, both the sides also agreed to explore the possibility of a free trade agreement in future.
India and the Gulf Cooperation Council, we are at this moment negotiating about having a free trade agreement. As far as Qatar is concerned, both sides are exploring the possibility of signing a free trade agreement in future, and that was one of the discussions that took place in this round of talks.
Let's now look a little deeper into this key partnership that India has with a nation in West Asia. We are joined by former Ambassador Anil Wadhwa. He's been in Oman as well, representing India, so has a very good grip on the affairs of the region. Good evening to you, Ambassador Wadhwa. What do you make of what's happened today in the context of how India has been conducting its relations with not just Qatar, particularly during the last 10 years, although the partnership, the relationship, diplomatic ties have been more than 5 decades old, but with the entire West Asian region?
So in the past decade or so, we've seen that there's been a high intensity in the relationship between India and the West Asian and GCC countries in particular. And with many of them, we've broken new ground as far as India is concerned. This agreement on the strategic partnership with Qatar was in any case in the making. And the relationship is such that Qatar now supplies 49% of India's LNG and 29% of India's LPG. So as far as energy security is concerned, it's a very important country. And as we just heard, the relationship is now changing into other fields and also diversifying, because Qatar looks at India now as a source of talent for the new age industries. Today, at the business forum, for instance, we heard from the Qatari side statements that they would like to look at alternate energy and also investments in joint manufacture of e-vehicles, for example, in collaboration with India. Also, in terms of what has happened in the bilateral talks, there was a clear indication that both sides are looking to diversify this relationship, and Qatar sees India as an ideal country with which to partner, given the talent pool here. Also, the amount of diaspora from India, which is there in Qatar, 840,000 people who are now engaged in 15,000 businesses in Qatar. And at the same time, the investments that they bring into Qatar itself. So this is a big living link between the two countries. And Qatar also finds value now with India. And at the same time, is looking at a free trade agreement, just like UAE and, of course, Oman. And that agreement is also very close to finalization. So the GCC countries in particular are looking at India with a renewed interest. And as far as India is concerned, Qatar is a strategic partner in all by all means, because of its growing geopolitical importance, uh, especially in the current circumstances, where it's playing a major role as far as the relationship between Israel and Hamas is concerned, and going forward, the role it will play in the reconstruction of Gaza, along with other GCC and Arab countries.
Okay, so a lot looking at the future here, but tell us, because India and Qatar have already been, they've had ties for more than 5 decades. They've had this vital relationship in the energy field for quite some time, and a contract that extends up to almost, the half of the 21st century, the former half of the 21st century. It's been extended to 2048, I believe. Lots of working groups already. Even defense ties are there in terms of training and joint exercises. So elevation to a strategic partnership, what does that really entail, and what would that mean to the relationship in terms of taking it further?
So there are these areas where India and Qatar have found common ground. You rightly mentioned defense and cooperation in defense. The exercises that India now undertakes with Qatar is a very important exhibition in which India takes part annually, where the Indian companies display what they have as far as GCC and the Arab states are concerned. Two very important agreements have already been signed way back in 2008 in the defense and security side. And thereafter, we've seen that in the region, with the importance of Qatar and with the energy security dependence that India has on countries of the Gulf, Qatar will continue to play a major role. Now, the current agreement that we have with Qatar has been renewed for another 20 years, and that gives us energy security, it brings stability, and at the same time, it guards against fluctuations in world prices because of the events which, as we all know, are happening around us today in a volatile world.
Yes, and also the fact that today it's been said that whereas the current bilateral trade is about $14 billion, and it's skewed heavily in favor of Qatar because of the kind of things we import from them for our energy security, but the goal is to double it in the next 5 years. So there will perhaps be a roadmap for that as well as part of this elevation to strategic levels of the ties.
So, we have to look at it, holistically, because as far as these trade figures are concerned, just about 2 years ago, we were doing $19 billion in bilateral trade with Qatar. Now, of course, India started buying oil from Russia and other sources as well. So the diversification has taken place. And obviously, if the quantities go down, then the bilateral trade, which is heavily skewed in favor of energy, will obviously show that difference. But it's a good thing that both sides have decided that they need to double what they have at the moment. And this is the bare minimum that India will import as far as energy is concerned from Qatar. Going forward, if it is the prices are good and they are competitive, India will definitely look at buying more from Qatar as well in the energy side. But if you look at Indian exports, which I'm seeing right now on the screen as we are talking, India's exports to Qatar are quite diversified. There are at least 20 commodities there, and that includes labor-intensive industries where India exports to Qatar. Now, it's a fact that Qatar is not such a big market, but at the same time, it can become a transit point for trading with other countries, with the neighbors, and as the Indian community there grows and entrenches itself in the business side, they will become a big bridge between India and Qatar.
And there is also the kind of investments that Qatar has, especially through its sovereign wealth fund. And do you think that is something which can be enhanced further? Because we have certain levels there, but it seems that there is a lot of scope to increase that as well. Is Qatar also looking for opportunities there?
Yes, so we have less than $1 billion of investments in Qatar, and that if you compare that with Qatari investments into India at $1.5 billion between 2000 and 2024, that's not a big figure. Now, for a country like Qatar, I think there should be more investments from Qatar into India in particular. And as I said, because our investments are essentially supporting the diaspora, which are small and medium enterprises, not so much of big businesses. India should also look at investments in some big ticket items, and big companies should look at Qatar quite seriously in the future. We have new fields which are emerging now where this can be possible. One of them is renewables, and another one going forward can be much more defense sales to Qatar. India would like Qatar to invest in India for Make in India as far as defense is concerned jointly. And there's been some interest which has been expressed during this current visit as well. So we hope that there will be a spurt to investments on both sides. By the way, the agreement that has been signed on the revised agreement on avoidance of double taxation and avoidance of fiscal evasion as far as income is concerned. Now that is a prelude to talking about an FTA, and it's a very good development in my view, because now the path is cleared for both sides to start seriously talking about an FTA on the lines of UAE and on the lines of Oman.
And can India also help Qatar in terms of diversifying its economy, like we've seen other West Asian countries, especially Saudi Arabia as well as the UAE, trying to diversify their economies away from just using the kind of resources that they've been blessed with, under the surface?
Absolutely. We have a model in place as far as diversification is concerned with the GCC countries. And just look at what has happened with UAE, for example, now. Of course, UAE has an additional element of connectivity projects, which we've been doing with that country, like the I2U2 and then the IMEC, India, Middle East, European corridor, etc. But also UAE is doing a lot with India in agriculture in terms of hydroponics, for instance, introducing science and technology for growing fruits and vegetables. Qatar can do something similar. And again, in renewables, as far as solar technologies are concerned, there's a big scope. There's a scope for wind energy as well between India and Qatar. So there are a whole lot of areas where both sides can make progress.
And what sort of common ground do we have with Qatar in terms of what the kind of developmental outlook that they have, and also the worldview that these two countries have? Do you feel that there is a certain common track that we follow in the direction of ensuring that both develop in an environment of peace and stability?
Yes, I'll come to that environment of peace and stability. But before that, let me tell you that while India has this vision 2047 of becoming a developed country, Qatar also has a vision 2030 of becoming a country with a diversified economy. So in that sense, both have a common interest in working in diverse fields as far as the economic cooperation and investments are concerned. Now coming to peace and stability in the region, I think it's very important as far as India is concerned that there is stability in the region, and that especially the conflict which has happened between Israel and Hamas does not have repercussions or does not spill over into other countries, because if they get involved, then obviously there is a certain amount of instability which is brought upon these countries. And India now has a huge expatriate population, a big diaspora working in the GCC and WANA countries. And
yes,
going
over
forward,
9.2 million, I believe.
That's right. And any instability there would cause enormous amount of difficulties as far as India is concerned. And also they are a vital link between their families back home here and these countries. So we need that peace and stability. It's in common interest to maintain that. It's also important, therefore, for India and these countries to work together to ensure that the world problems do not spill over into the region.
And a final word on India's overall engagement with West Asia, especially in recent years. Do you feel that it is headed in a direction where India has elevated its, I wouldn't say just a utility, but its place among these nations, and vice versa? Because at one time it used to be hyphenated with another country, one of our neighbors, but now that's in a completely different domain.
Oh, absolutely. You're absolutely right over there because, India, with its proactive stance, has succeeded in doing that. And I think it was high time that this development happened because the Indian economy has also been growing quite well over the past few years. And these countries now see India on a standalone basis. It's one of those countries which is poised to do well economically. It's already, progressing towards the title of fourth largest economy, and at some point in the future, and the third largest economy by purchasing power parity. So that is before for the world to see, and as far as these countries are concerned, being our neighbors, in a sense, they would definitely look at cooperation with India on a standalone basis and not through the prism of any other country.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for joining us and talking about how India is conducting its ties with not just Qatar, whose Amir is here on a 2-day state visit. This is the second day itself, but also with the entire region of West Asia. Thank you once again, Ambassador Wadhwa. And that's all we have for this special show on India's ties with Qatar. But do keep watching DD India for all the latest.